It's time for Supply Chain Now Radio, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good morning. Scott Luton here with you live on Supply Chain Now Radio. Welcome back to the show. On today's show, we are talking about making deals across the end-to-end supply chain industry. As we all know, M&A activity has been brisk, and we're going to learn from two subject matter experts that have been there and done that, so stay tuned. Like all of our series on Supply Chain Now Radio, you can find our replays on a variety of channels: Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, Greg White, wherever you get your podcasts from. As always, we'd love to have you subscribe so you don't miss anything. Let's thank our sponsors that allow us to bring these best practices and innovative ideas to you, our audience. They range from the Effective Syndicate, Vector Global Logistics, ProPurchaser.com, Spend Management Experts, and many more. You can check out each of our sponsors on the show notes of this episode. All right, so let's welcome in my fearless co-host here today. You may have heard him chime in, Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur and trusted advisor. Greg, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great.
Chiefs keep winning.
Yeah,
got to be happy about that, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to date this podcast, so we're not going to tell you which game it was. But
can we please say which game it was? Because, you know, it was a Chargers home game.
Yes.
Technically, but clearly there were a lot more Kansas City fans in the stands than there were Charger fans. So
going global, too, wasn't it? In Mexico, right?
City. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Estadio Azteca.
Well, we're going to keep driving on.
Okay, we can't talk about the Chiefs all day.
That's the NFL series is our next series.
That's right.
The tape's next Tuesday. But now today we're going to talk about a subject that we've really just alluded to here and there rather than take a deeper dive.
Yeah.
So, and with all the activity that's taking place from an M&A standpoint, really across industry, you know, logistics and transportation probably gets spoken about the most because of freight tech, logistics tech, whatever you want to call that. We're really excited to kind of glean the best insights and industry insights from these two folks here. But before we do, let's get a news update from Malcolm and the news desk.
Thank you to Malcolm. Yeah. So I'm not sure that everyone is familiar with this, but you know, since
we're going to find out.
Yeah, let's do. Since ELD was introduced in 2017. Hours of service violations are down like almost 37%, which is good, right? So that hours of service violation is a truck driver, driving more than 14 hours in a stint. Interestingly, however, accidents are not down, and speeding violations are still incurred at about the same rate.
Wow,
so
that's surprising.
It is, but I don't know, and you might want to chime in here, Adam, even though we haven't introduced you. But I think that HOS was the primary reason for ELD, wasn't it?
I would say so.
Yeah,
I couldn't think of a bigger opportunity to make a move like that.
Yeah,
well, you know. I got kind of put the cart before the horse. Let's go ahead and recognize our featured guests. That's a great idea. And then we can
can talk again.
Yes. So Adam McDaniel, to our audience, you may have just heard him chime in there, Senior Vice President, Enterprise Solutions with Redwood Logistics. Good morning, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. And Michael Golden, partner at Arnold Golden Gregory, an Atlanta-based national law firm that works extensively across the end-to-end supply chain community. So good morning to Adam and to Michael.
Good morning.
So now let's back to ELD. So despite the greater finger on the pulse that the government and regulation and companies can have, it's still not having the complete effect that a lot of folks might expect it to have.
I think this is just my uneducated opinion as someone who
drove a truck here today.
Yeah, right. As someone who is conscious of how drivers are driving on the road, I take some. I love driving and I like driving on long trips, so I've seen some of that. Drivers on the highways.
Yep.
I'm very sensitive to it because my daughter went to Georgia Southern, and we've had a couple of fatal accidents on I-16 on the way there. So this is an issue of some import to me. But I think the main issue that they wanted to impact was drivers driving dozy or whatever, right, beyond the number of hours that they should, and that is one of the biggest causes of accidents. Now, what this information says is accidents still occur, but there are much fewer. There are many fewer. Can you say that? Many fewer?
We'll roll with it.
Many fewer serious accidents occurring. Truckers are still speeding, right, as much as the GPS will let them do it. But I think the biggest issue, just from a regular consumer and driver's standpoint, is just them driving, when they're excessively tired.
Right.
What do you think? I mean,
I'd probably like to see the stat around average accidents per trucks on the road, right? 2018 was a spike market, so we have a lot more trucks on the road. Coming into 19, which has been a soft market, it created that a little bit, right? We got too much supply on the road.
Yeah.
Average accidents per truck would probably give us a better estimate. Living with a statistician, you start to learn around what the stats mean, right? They get slanted. So more accidents might not mean that there's more accidents all around from the efficiency measures, but I think, listen, you had to get involved from the government standpoint. You had to make a change. Civilians are dying. There's lots of trucks on the road. There's got to be a lot of mandates around what we can and can't do from an industry standpoint. So, and
something we're going to talk about here in a little bit, digitization's happening. So it makes a lot of sense that it needs to happen in terms of how we collect the metrics to make everybody safer, and including bringing some insurance rates down, better protecting the drivers, right?
Sure.
But with any big change, you're going to have a lot of pushback, a lot of challenges. I mean, when you're moving someone's cheese that significantly, it's going to be challenging to kind of work through. But Greg, what else from the news desk over there?
Yeah, so ocean freight. Let's talk about all the biggies while we're here, right? So instant quoting. So a number of the big carriers have introduced instant quoting. Hapag-Lloyd, CMA, and Maersk. Have all introduced instant quoting, all on their own platform. So I think you're still kind of captive to their rates, but that's a big thing. I mean, you think about the days of making a phone call, waiting for a phone call back, people shuffling papers to try and figure out what this lane with this product on this vessel is we should charge. I think it's a big step in the right direction, right? I think the next step is to democratize it some, to have these rates available in a general marketplace, not just a one-to-one marketplace.
Yep.
But that's a big change. Obviously, it impacts the speed with which things can be done.
Right.
It does increase the transparency some. In terms of knowing what the rates are, you're still a bit tied to a particular carrier. I mean, you'd still have to shop them each individually on their individual sites.
Well, speaking of ocean freight, we had Lee Klaskow with Bloomberg Intelligence on the show a few weeks back. We're about to publish his episode, and he was weighing in on AMO 2020, right? Talk about what's going to disrupt the ocean freight industry in a good and bad way. Would be really curious to see how that plays out, because as we spoke about, it's as much about the technology of what they're moving to as is the supply chain to make sure all the ports have it to keep ocean freight moving. So huge. Any of y'all, anything you want to contribute in that?
It probably just speaks to what you were saying earlier. Digitization's here, right? The cloud-based SaaS modeling is here. Ocean freight's been one of those modes where it's kind of been lagging in that area. I know that Maersk and those partners are really working hard on that front, but they're so large, right? They have so many, different competing aspects that they have to tackle on a day-to-day basis. They want to do what's best for everyone, right? Everyone gets their stuff from overseas on a vessel, right? Very rarely do we use air freight. I don't know what the allocation percentage is, but it's low to high. So I think they're just, they're trying to do the best they can, just like we're trying to do the best on the domestic front, in the North American front. We're trying to do the visibility raise-ups for our clients is the number one thing that we're trying to provide.
Yeah, I think the consumer requires it, and it's pushing back up through the supply chain to be as transparent as you can in your supply chain, whether you're a shipper or carrier or whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. There's still a long ways to go. So even Maersk said their offline process is 13 steps. Their online process is still 5 steps.
Sure.
Whatever those steps are. So there's a long way to go, but that's still a pretty significant process.
Absolutely.
Reduction, right?
Big year ahead for ocean freight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, no doubt. And that's the news.
Fantastic.
There you have it. I thought I'd deliver 3, but there really wasn't anything
shrinkage
that much more interesting.
Well, we could cover headlines and have a 6-hour show. I mean, there's so many things, but I like your cherry picked approach. Right?
Yeah. Well, hey, can I make one quick announcement on the news? So, you've made it when the gentleman who asked us to reinsert news into each show. I used his first and last name, and he said, "Hey, could you not use my last name because too many people are reaching out to me?" So we've made it, right? When we have to say Steve and Alpharetta.
Yeah, that's right. It's like that moment in The Jerk where he finds his name in the phone book. Right. Yes. Okay. All right. So let's dive in. We again excited about these 2 guests here. One, Michael Golden is a repeat guest. We were kidding before we went live here, and we were talking about how he was vying with Elba Pereira Gallagher as making the #1 most appearances here.
Yeah.
We're close. His firm's hosted the show. They've been on the show. They're very active in the supply chain space, which is really neat to see that specialization that Ward Richmond talks about, right, all the time.
Yeah.
And let's get to know both of y'all. Adam, this is your first appearance on the show here. Adam, let's start with you. So tell us a little bit as we're looking to paint a picture of who you are, where you're from, and tell us about your journey from, born and raised to, your current role.
Right. Well, I'm probably one of the few out here who started in logistics at birth. Right. My father, I was born in Lafayette, Louisiana. He was a terminal manager for Saia Transport at the time.
Wow.
I've recently asked him, and I've yet to get a straight answer. 1977 high school graduate. 1980 is not until there's deregulation. He's in supply chain management at Mississippi State in like 78 through 81. And I was like, did you get a tip? Like, what were you what were you doing in there? Obviously going through that process. But
did they even call it supply chain back then? What do you think they called it?
I don't know if he was a transportation major or something like that. I think he did mention at one point he had 3 people in his class, right?
Okay.
So, obviously not very heavy on the participation rates at Mississippi State, but they got a great school over there.
Yeah.
He went right into it. Born in Lafayette, Saia Transport, moved from there when he onboarded at Carolina Transport. If you remember those guys, great trucks, red letters, Cherry Hill, and moved around, right? Meridian, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. My family on that side's from Mississippi. And in 1990, he took the Atlanta West job for Carolina Transport. And, we moved to Powder Springs, which was about 25 minutes from Fulton Industrial, which is where his terminal headquarters was. And just, became a freight family.
One of the toughest stretches of road in Metro Atlanta. When I moved to Atlanta, I was covering territory that covered Fulton Industrial from start to finish.
Yep.
You had to some days you had to dodge pallets in the road, right? Amongst other things.
What I say is that's the breeding ground for real logisticians.
Right.
we all came from the hard knocks over there at Fulton Industrial. I've worked at. We just moved in 2017. I've been working there since 2009. So, I've got a lot of track record at Fulton Industrial under my belt as well. So, and growing up in that family with him and working at his shop and, going through some of the key points, I think, 90, the move to Georgia was different for our family, right? Powder Springs is a fantastic place to grow up. Ended up going to McEachern High School, which obviously is a huge, sports corridor for what I was trying to attempt to do. And, going through the 94 strike, riding with him to work through picket lines and things. That was pretty crazy. That's a whole nother day's worth of podcast there, I'm sure.
The Fulton Industrial Series.
A lot of child therapy in that one.
I'm telling you, riding around in a Mazda going through picket lines, that's a different deal. And then 97, after the strike, and he went and ABF purchased Carolina's, majority control. He just started, wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so, I thought we had it good. Sardines and peanut butter sandwiches later, a couple of years. We're starting to eat steak a little bit every now and then, late in high school. But it was such a wild ride to be in a household where you went all in. We talked about it a little bit before the show started. When you're an entrepreneur, you got to go all the way in. There's no secondary guessing. There's no what if we don't make it. You're not going to make it. If that's a mindset that you got in entrepreneurship, that's just something that you're not going to make it. My dad was great with that. He was an awesome leader, operational, orchestrator. He had been through union, casual, the whole 9 yards, and running a warehousing and trucking outfit here in Atlanta, through the early 2000s was a boom, and he had a lot of success doing that. And working in between baseball games or football games or, working when I could, mostly sweeping the warehouse. He thought that was the only job that I was really intelligent enough to hold. So
he was wrong.
He Miyagi'd me. It's we're still here. So
paint the fence.
But yeah, you came up on a decision where I was able to accept a scholarship to the University of Georgia to play baseball. Played for the Dogs for 4 years, had some great teams. Went to the College World Series twice.
What
won
position?
an SEC championship. I was a shortstop, third base, and then turned relief pitcher back half of my career. So kind of an interesting.
Yeah.
Probably my best asset at the time. And then ended up getting drafted by the Padres and kind of doing the minor league thing for a while. Which
where'd you go first?
Eugene, Oregon.
Double-A.
Yeah, it was, that was short season at the time. There was some great athletes out there. It was a part of the country that I don't know if I would ever actually got to go out there and see that. Got to build some awesome relationships and, do it, right? Do the professional athlete thing and, learn. I know minor leagues are about to go through a big shift and change and all that, but
that's right.
It was a very interesting time in life, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, right? There's opportunity costs with getting education versus staying in the minor leagues, and ultimately decided that, wasn't drafted high enough, didn't see the investment being made in a short career to the majors or anything like that. Maybe I wasn't even good enough to get there in the long run anyways, but wanted to come back and maximize this opportunity to get my education at University of Georgia. Just really loved the school. Athens was such a fantastic place for me. And came back to one semester, lived with some football guys where we were number one in the country. That wasn't interesting. Another podcast. Most of that's probably not for share. But
that's a Joe Rogan podcast.
And then in January 5th, 2009, jumped right, full feet into my father's company, right on the hindsight of 08, 09. Right. So, what I think the greatest time to be working in logistics, probably not for everyone, but starting out, with nothing, we went right into a price market, and we were able to do some things and be creative in that value creation, especially with a younger mindset, and I kind of hadn't been here very long and wanted to test the waters in a bunch of areas, shell off some bad, bring on some good, and had a great run working with your dad. I mean, there's just nothing better than that. Michael and I both can attest to that. It's difficult, I think, to say the least, but it's one of those time periods where I look back on that I'll never be able to trade, and I think talking with other people, they wish that they could have that opportunity.
Outstanding. And when did you join the Redwood organization?
So I met Michael in 2015, 3 transactions, and 3 years later brought me to the CI Capital Redwood staff. I mean, just couldn't be happier. It's a star-studded class, as you guys know, really moving and shaking. I think that they've got a great platform. We're all growing in the same areas, and I'm just so happy to be a part of that team.
Yep, and we're going to talk more about that and those transactions you mentioned here in a few minutes. I want to shift gears back over to Michael Golden with AGG. So, Michael, you've been on. You're not new to our listeners, but let's make sure they are aware of your background. Sure. So, where are you from, and where have you spent your career?
Strangely, Adam and I, our backgrounds somewhat mirror each other. Yeah. So, I started, playing in my dad's law office as a young child. And I'm frequently asked, you became a lawyer because your dad's a lawyer. As if that was a commandment. It was not a commandment, but what I saw is that my dad enjoyed his career, and he did something that had an unintentional impact on me, which was he would take me on business trips with him. So if he had a trip to New York, he would take me to New York. If he had one in Houston, he would take me to Houston. And what I saw was how he got involved with his clients. The law is really just a conduit or a enabler, the rules of engagement to allow a business to do something. We're ancillary to the business, but we're important to the business, making good and safe decisions. So I am from Atlanta. Other than the detour of going to school in Philadelphia and Durham, I'm a lifelong Atlantan. I'm a booster of the city. I'm lucky that I've lived in Atlanta of this era, because drive around Atlanta, you can't see anything but growth.
Right.
As my mother-in-law likes to say, the official bird of Atlanta is the crane, the construction crane. And,
you know that right outside your office
yes,
window.
I do.
That's pretty good.
And I work in a law firm that was started by my grandfather, and my father works there still to this day actively. And there is something special about working with your father. There's pluses and minuses, but the pluses far outweigh the minuses.
Gosh, we have lots of fodder for future podcasts. I want to dive into that so much, but we've got to protect our time because we want to talk about M&A activity and digitization. But quick departure, want to get your favorite books that you recently read or are reading. And Adam, let's start with you.
So I'm actually on a new venture. I'm trying to be consistent and, dedicated to new things in 2020, coming off of new things for 2019. 20 minutes a night I'm reading. So it seems like that's nothing, but it is daunting, I will tell you. I've never been really a reader. It's just I run hot, so just don't sit down very often. Drives my wife insane. But really have enjoyed the books here lately, and right now I'm in the middle of Ray Dalio's Principles. I think it's, one of those good power skims, right? Hit the highlights if you see something that you want to dive into. It's a long book. Actually got it from Eric Rimpel,
okay.
He, over the CIO over at Redwood, who's an avid reader, and he'll send me tidbits. Hey, have you read this? You should read this. We share in The Alchemist, which is one of those books that we both find to be very interesting. So I'm in the middle of that right now and trying to, get through it and then get on to another one, right?
20 minutes a day.
20 minutes a day.
And I believe Eric was one of the keynotes at the Logistics CIO Forum out in Austin, Texas.
He's so fantastic.
Yeah.
Man. He's got a lot going on up there, and he's super brilliant.
Well, we didn't get a chance to sit down with him because I think he had so much buzz around him, but
right.
That was a well-received conference, 2 days of power thought leaders for sure. Okay, so Michael, what about you? A favorite book?
So right now I'm reading two books. Coincidentally, both involve Atlanta. One's a new book, one's an old book. I'm reading Barbarians at the Gate. Found it on a bookshelf, hadn't read it, and was given to me 20 years ago. It's about KKR's takeover of RJR Nabisco, which largely centered around Atlanta. And the other book is a book that was just released in the last week. It's about the Olympic Park bombing and Richard Jewell. It's called The Suspect, and coincidentally, Clint Eastwood is releasing a movie about that also called Richard Jewell. And they're both very much character-driven, true stories.
I saw Olivia Wilde and Marcel's.
Really? What? And that movie is either out or it's already being reviewed.
Coming out in the next
couple of weeks.
I think it's December
coming out.
15th.
Yeah, they're here.
Yeah.
John Hamm and all those guys are in town doing the shooting and the filming of it.
Okay, so let's shift gears over. I want to, Adam, you've already spoken to Redwood Logistics, but real quick for those few that may not know, in a nutshell, what does the firm do, and then where do you spend your time?
So I'm, obviously brand new to the Redwood team with the transaction closing earlier this year. I am a absolute neophyte in this size. I'm trying to learn as fast as I possibly can. I was able to take about a 10-week or 12-week tour of Chicago, where the headquarters is, and really learn mostly about the multimodal stage. The full truckload brokerage wasn't really part of my past, much more ingrained in the LTL space, a little bit more in parcel and freight forwarding. But I've been able to kind of grow through that. And then, walking into 2020, we're just trying to grow our portfolio, really focused on enterprise sales, which for us means, trying to take customers and make sure that we're offering them all facets of what the Redwood platform, can really offer to them.
Because you have tech too, right? You have a TMS.
We have everything.
Right.
as I've had to learn, we've really got, and what's great about it is I don't have to be versed, right? I think I mentioned before I kind of, it's wonderful to work with Mark. He's like Kirby Smart in the fact that he lets his players do what they do well. But I'm not clued in on the offensive strategy. When I'm on defense, I like to think of myself as a free safety.
Yeah.
That's what I played in high school.
On an island,
doing my thing, trying to run with the team as best as I possibly can, and focus on what's under my purview.
Yeah.
A lot of growth. We'll have to have you back on as the industry changes and evolves so much, and you have so many different capabilities at Redwood. We could that's 17 shows right there.
Yeah.
So we'll have to have you back.
And I'm not the right one to house that, right? I mean, Mark and those guys do such a great job. It's so fast moving for them, being PE backed and at this level. It's so fun to watch and be a part. Todd Berger and I talk a lot about it. It really is a jump from the minor leagues to the big leagues. Having this much spend, having this much accessibility to bright minds, being able to think about the industry in a completely different manner than your microcosm of growing your own small business. You're head down. You're kind of trained right. You're on a track. You're going to service a mission, which we can talk about with Michael and I's. Interactions together was really that, like, let's create a mission that makes sense for me personally, for my family, for the business itself and the members of the business. And let's put our head down and let's go get that.
But I bet you're a number one draft pick for the company softball team. I bet everybody's vying to get you as their starting shortstop, right?
It's funny you say that. I've probably played 2 softball games in my career. I guess it's one of those things. I always felt like baseball wasn't like basketball. It's not a pickup sport. Right. And softball kind of felt like a little bit pickup-ish to me. I've seen some guys tear some ACLs. I've seen some guys, tear some labrums. I was fortunate enough to get out,
with all your
catastrophic injury after thousands and thousands of baseball games. So
you're good.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm in the
gym,
parts, right?
I'm in the Peloton. I'm in the safe, all the safe things.
Gotcha. All right. So Michael, quick question for you as well. What does the transportation and logistics practice at AGG do, and where do you spend your time supporting it?
Thank you. I would say our practice sort of runs sort of, as you use the term, end to end. We have a client base that's, I would say, asset heavy. They own trucks, they own property, they may provide services within those warehouses that they own, but sort of what you would have called a trucking or a warehouse lawyer in the 80s. Now we call them logistics lawyers.
Right.
What I would say, if our practice is any reflection of what's going on in this area, it's a move to data and technology. And so a lot of our clients today look like small tech companies that in the 90s you would have said they were an internet company or an e-tailer. They're providing a service. The asset is data or technology. Sometimes it's proprietary technology. Sometimes it's aftermarket technology that they use as a tool to do their job better. And then because of our experience in that area, we have other clients, shippers, if you will, who we represent in their supply chain issues that would come up with their vendors, or perhaps with the government. Importation problems.
Right. As we were talking about this on Twitter with some of our followers, as exciting of a time as it is to be in the end-to-end supply chain space these days, and as we've talked about 1,000 times, the industry, you see more chief supply chain officers than ever before. There's a seat at the table for your supply chain leaders like never before. However, I would argue that there's never ever been a greater need for sage counsel and advisors, especially in this global environment, right?
It's so complex.
Yes,
right?
It is so complex. And to Michael's point, firms that were categorized here that dealt with this portion are now pulled, technology is supply chain these days and vice versa, right? So I'm sure y'all's team has no shortage of things on its plate here lately.
Right.
Well, with just trade and tariff compliance.
Yes,
I would think there's a huge opportunity to look. You've recognized it. We all recognize it when you build a company. You're good at what you're good at, right? And there are very few people who are great at running a logistics company and great at understanding and managing risk, the complexities of the law.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Or finance, or pick a specialty.
Yep.
Right?
But don't pick more than 3. Right.
Right.
Or maybe
pick
not
experts
more than 1.
for all of them.
That's right.
I guess that's the point.
That's right. So let's talk about digitization. We've already alluded to it a couple times. Adam, I know all the projects and the transactions and just what you've been through in your career. You've seen a good bit of everything when it comes to digital transformation that's really changing the industry. Give us a couple of your key lessons learned or key observations from that time.
Sure. So, in 2009, it was such a different, it seems like that was eons ago, right? It was such a different feel. It's all manual, right? The bill ladings are manual. Everything's being written down. Fax is key, right? When you're accepting load. I'm laughing. I laugh inside all the time. I'm thinking about how many times I had to fax a key tender, right, to a large customer, 3M or someone like that size, and we're faxing back and forth, and there's rate changes, and you got to pick the phone up, and it's just such a different world than where we are now. When we sold the family business in 2016 with Michael's group, it was sad. I think that was the majority of what I felt. Great, because it would allow me to do the things that I wanted to do in my career, but sad that a 20-year run was ending, right? And you just don't see that very often. You don't see entrepreneurs start something and then be able to consistently keep that and grow that for 20 years through all those adaptations and iterations of the internet, right? When he started in 97, the internet wasn't even, Netscape was here, right? And, in 2016, when we sell, it's
Earthlink.
Yeah, we're on Tableau. It's just a completely different field, and we both saw it. He and I both saw it. It was going to be a transformation in digital process. It was going to be data. That was going to be the future. He had no appetite to do that, the want to stay in, and I did. And I think that that was a schism that we were able to, identify and want to move forward. So closing that warehousing and trucking transaction was key for us to be able to move. We also wanted to pivot, right? Off the brokerage side, we wanted to pivot to a cloud-based SaaS model, consulting, cutting edge tech, those kinds of things. And then, we branded LTX with some investors out of Florida, and we had a great run. We essentially had nothing and grew in 24 months to the size that we could sell the stake to CI Capital and overarching Redwood Holdings. And, it was an arduous road, right?
Sure.
Fantastic team. Speak a little bit to what I think was key is really having an advisor that understood not only supply chain, which is hard to find, right? Michael's a unicorn that he won't speak too much to, but I will.
Clearly, we've tried to get him to.
Yeah, it's not. It's it's like being in the room with a legend, right? They're not going to talk about
himself. Yeah, he doesn't have to.
Yeah, it's exactly. What I heard recently was real G's move in silence, right?
That's right.
But he was able to identify options for me, but never close me off, right? I think he knew early that if it was going to be a closure aspect to something in my life, I was going to run right at it. Hopefully I've grown past that and matured. I would like to think that. I think that, having a child will do that, right? I've got a 20-month-old. That's puts a little extra perspective on things and some focus, but he did such a phenomenal job for myself on saying, hey, you like these aspects of this business, go with it. You can do this, right? You can move in this direction, and we can still get you to where you want to go. And I like to grow businesses to sell them,
sure.
Right? Like that's to me, that's the principle of growing a business is to make sure that you can continue to foster organic growth through the whole thing. And part of that growth within an organization is to take special-minded people who are good in specific areas and then bolt them onto what you're trying to do in the long run. And I think so. I don't know that we we were sold on the fact early that it was going to be private equity, right? This is the only route. It's just access to capital, and they've got a lot of it, and there's a lot of them. I had no shortage of meetings. I probably had 75 meetups
prior to selling.
For sure.
This 2-year time frame.
While growing the business.
So one last question about this 2-year journey. You talked to all the kind of how you transformed the business,
sure.
right? From month 1 to month 24. One of the common threads we talk to a lot of these conversations we have with business leaders is as they are identifying technology and then bringing it on, doing so in a very practical manner, not one where, hey, this is the latest and greatest technology. We're going to invest and be a me too.
Sure.
Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that we were early on in the RPA world, the robotic process automation. We felt as though that with lean management, right, we were me and the COO were really focused on lean management. Our manufacturing partners and our customers had always been doing it. We found it very fascinating, the Japanese way. And so we wanted to take that mindset and clean up processes along the way and then loop them in a virtual way, right? Because most of what we were doing was going to be redundant for humans to do. And I think that really we were able to leverage that technology into growing a larger field organization than it was for human capital that we could expend. It also gave opportunities for others. I mean, when we closed a transaction in January, we had almost 50% female. And I think that's probably my most proud thing is not that the women need the help by any means. It's just that they don't know that the opportunities in data are the same in logistics as they may be in other industries, right? I mean, we're doing the same things.
Yeah, and I would add to that firms that are deliberate in terms of making sure that they are providing opportunities for all right. Walks of life, all genders, all to get them on board, because as we all know, we've talked about this lots here recently, is diversity adds to the bottom line.
For sure.
Right? And to have a firm, and so I would add, y'all's firm was probably in the 2 percentile to have upwards of 50%
for sure
to be female. That is outstanding.
It wasn't even something that we mandated internally. It wasn't a board discussion, right, with the PE. It was just simply interview for the best position for the job.
Yeah.
And don't shy away from that individual, no matter who they are, age, sex, whatever, and obviously, we just put together a really robust team of individuals that had different thoughts and theories on how to do things. And
the customer wins.
The customer wins,
yeah.
And trying to make that service product offering around that, customer experience.
Yeah. Great. Well put.
I wanted to jump in here on something Adam said a minute ago, which was his transition as a leader. He went from being in a family business. And the essence of a family business is continuing the family owning and controlling the business, whether they're running it on a day-to-day basis. This was a business his dad started. It was an asset-intensive business. It was, I don't want to say old economy, because people still provide the function that his former company provides. You need trucks and space. But he evolved into being a modern entrepreneur. And as you heard, he builds companies to sell them. That's the antithesis, in my experience, of a family-owned business. And we represent lots of family businesses. And keeping the business in the family and supporting the family
is important for a lot of those.
I mean, it may be more important than whether their profit margin is 10% or 8%. And that probably, his change in thinking probably also opened up his thinking, whether it was conscious or subconscious, in bringing in people of all different types, women, minorities, and the like. I mean, he has gone through an incredible sea change in his business accomplishments and what he's done in a very short period of time.
Well, I think one of the things I hear you speaking to, Michael, is y'all do a good job, and I think the best advisors and resources, they understand what the ownership and leadership, where they want to go, and then working with them to plot the right strategy and uncovering the blind spots. That's rather than just assume all organizations want X, Y, Z. I heard a lot of customization and approach there, what you were speaking to. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, businesses, whether you have assets or not, are just made up of people. And not everybody's the same, and not everybody's goal's the same. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Our goal is to help them reach whatever their goal is. And it's different for different people.
Yep, agreed. All right, so we're going to make a right turn here, and we're going to talk about M&A activity. We noted on our weekly supply chain buzz from just a few weeks ago, Wall Street Journal's Paul Page came out with this number of the day, which I love. I don't know if y'all get the logistics snapshot every morning. I love it. $27.6 billion was the number of the day a few weeks back, and that was any guesses what that was, Greg?
No idea.
That's the combined transaction value of M&A activity in the transportation and logistics sector in just third quarter 2019. That was the most since first quarter 2018, according to PwC, where the number came from. So, the flurry of activity, right? Let's talk about y'all's experiences before we get your do's and don'ts of successful deals and maybe not so successful deals. You got to learn as much from
Why
both.
did you look at me when you said not so successful deals?
Always got to keep an eye on you, Greg. That's why. No, of course not. But I think the point being, you learn as much from the wins as you do from the losses, right? Or the ones that you don't win. Maybe a better way of putting it. But first, let's talk more about Michael. You were just kind of speaking to some of y'all's work together. Talk more about that. What were some of the observations from the deals y'all have worked on together? Share more with our listeners.
Well, I think the most important thing is keeping things early on at a high level. Don't get don't prejudge where you want to go. We only want to sell to. We don't want to sell to a private equity firm,
right?
Or we only want to sell to an operator, or
we're only going IPO.
We're only going IPO, or we don't want to sell control, or we don't care about selling control. I mean, keep the goals more focused on the business and where you're going. It is important to identify what's important to you. So control might be an important thing, but don't prejudge it. I think Adam would say that he's got wide latitude to do what he does for Redwood now, but he doesn't control Redwood.
Sure.
And I'm sure you've had a lot of internal thoughts about that. If we'd started with we'll never sell to private equity, he wouldn't be where he is today.
That's right.
Sure.
There's a lot of moving pieces, right, as you determine what's important, what isn't important, and rather than making those assumptions or making some of those determinations too early, give it some deliberate thought. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely.
Build
Adam?
a great company first. That's like you said. That's the thing is I know you said you build companies to sell them, but you build them great, knowing that that's what makes them sell, right?
Without a great company,
Absolutely.
you've got no buyers, right? I mean, people any entrepreneur has run up against that, wanting to sell at a particular time and the macro events not lining up, right? Wanting to sell a business and your economic numbers don't make sense for what you think it's worth, right? Or what the market thinks it's worth. I think one of the key factors of what I learned in all the interviews with any private equity or strategic or any of that kind of stuff is that you get an unbiased view of your company. Typically, it's negative. They're either posturing to make sure that they get the price that they want, or they're just telling you flat out, here are the things you need to work on. Man, we took every single nugget of that and discarded what we felt like didn't really apply to us, but really went heavy at the ones that we felt like, hey, they're right. And until we do that, we're not going to have any more interviews or whatever the case may be. So, I think that was important. I think to Michael's point, though, open-mindedness is it has to be. If you're looking to sell your company and you shell off one buyer, then that's a shame on you moment, in my opinion.
So you were talking earlier about a slew of conversations you had from potential suitors, you name it. How do y'all both gauge what is a successful conversation or effective conversation versus one that is not going anywhere past once that cup of coffee's done?
Sure. I mean, I'll speak to just the recent one, all the interviews and all that, 99% of the conversations around financials. One conversation that I had with a principal of the PE was about LTL freight and the complexities of the tariffs that we're facing today, and how would we monetize that in the future, and what we were looking at from a carrier partnership standpoint. An hour later, we're still talking about LTL freight. An hour later, I'm on the phone with, the legend Mark Yeager, and we're talking about the same thing. That doesn't happen. I can just tell you flat out that doesn't happen. Didn't happen in my experience. Most of it's around financial bias. Most of it's around wanting me and the team to be a platform company, right, rather than a bolt-on. We wanted to be we wanted to learn, right? Activity is gained through education, and we wanted to make sure that, we were a part of a much larger organism where we could learn and prosper. And I think that, Redwood's not only offered that, it's offered it, in droves for us. So, I mean, we just feel blessed.
Yep. Michael, those early conversations, what makes those more successful than others?
The ability of the bidder, potential buyer, to listen to the seller and hear what their goals are and where they want to go with it. I mean, it's, selling your business, unless you're selling your business and you're going to give the buyer the keys and go away, which happens a lot. But unless that is what the seller's goal is, selling your business becomes the formation of a new partnership. Even if you don't retain any ownership in the acquired company, you do have a vested, in my experience, most sellers have a vested emotional interest in what they've sold. And they care about it. And frequently it's because they care about the people who have worked with them and helped them build the company. I've found the best business people actually appreciate the people who work for them, as much or maybe more than the clients that they serve.
Interesting.
Agreed.
I think you have to acknowledge also that when a transaction like that occurs, there are often some real stipulations there. You might be required to work there for 2 years.
Certain.
There could be earnouts. I mean, there's all kinds of deal structures that can impact that as well. But I can tell you, having done it myself, that the overarching feeling that you have is for those people that you've just changed the course of their life, right? Because you no longer control it.
Sure.
Right? You aren't, as you talked about earlier, right? You care about those folks, and now you've put them in somebody else's hands.
Team members,
right?
You're speaking,
so
folks on the team.
It's a monumental shift. To Michael's point earlier, I mean, even in my seat, I like to think that I'm adaptable. I've always put a lot of time and effort into kind of a 360 view around myself, and I try to do the best by all that I can with the decision, with the information that I have at hand. But you don't know. I again, a decade long of being in the hot seat, and then come a day, and you don't even know where you fit. You don't know what's going. They don't know either, right?
It's just a job now.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
it's trying to figure. Everyone's trying to figure it out, and they don't need me for a ton of the things that the LTX platform needed me for. Right? The day-to-day decision making, the conjunction with culture. They're great. They've been there and done this longer than I've even thought about it. So they don't need me to do certain things. Finding your way within the organization to add value, on a day in, day out basis is probably the hardest thing to do, but you have so much more to look at. Right. So you have so much more opportunity to, have success within the organization and prove that you can align. Right. I went through this exact same thing at Georgia. You are all state, all county, everybody is that goes D1, especially SEC baseball. Right. You
now
walk
you're
on
just average,
and you're being recruited. On top of that, so the coach is your best friend. All of a sudden, he ain't picking up your phone calls, right? I love Coach Perna to death, but I was a freshman, right? What's he going to talk to me about? So you walk onto this field where everybody was all state and everybody was all county, and you finally look around and 75% of that field is better than you are, just flat better.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Are you going to shell up? Are you going to work hard? Are you going to work overtime? What are you going to do at that point to make yourself become what you want to do at the end of the day? We all have aspirations, right? Everyone at this table's got aspirations to do certain things. These are stepping stones to getting the knowledge pieces that you need in order to aspire or to be what you aspire at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah.
Well put. So I want to wrap up today's segment, and we've already kind of spoken to this a lot, but as succinctly as you can put it, when you think of the do's and the don'ts of a successful deal, a successful exit, a successful acquisition, whatever angle you want to take it, because we have listeners that undoubtedly are building their companies to sell. We got listeners that are undoubtedly building their companies to keep within the family for generations to come, and we've got listeners that are certainly looking to acquire, right? A variety of different organizations to fuel their enterprise growth. So what do y'all think are the most important things related to the do's and don'ts of the M&A world? And let's start with Michael.
Okay, I'm going to give you I'll give you two.
Yep.
One sort of granular and one's big picture. I'll start with the big picture. Probably half the clients that I represent who are going to go through a transaction, we've had a long history with them. And I'm part of their team who has, for better or worse, they trust us. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes I'm being hired for the transaction and we don't have the experience working together. What I've observed is that if you have somebody where you have a pre-existing, comfortable, trustworthy relationship, it makes the stress of going through the transaction, and it will be stressful, much smoother and much less stressful. It's still going to be stressful, but what I've observed about some people is if they don't have that deep, long tenured relationship with an advisor, whether it's the accountant, the lawyer, someone in their peer-to-peer networking group, what happens is they think they can get to the right answer or the best advice by triangulating on a bunch of people's advice. And what that does is it creates confusion and delay in making decisions, and maybe not even the best decision. So the best time to find a primary care doctor is when you're not sick. Okay? Same thing with whoever that advisor is you want to choose. Okay, the other thing that I would say, the single most important thing, and Adam alluded to it earlier, which is 99% of the people that looked at his company wanted to hear about the financials. If you don't have good accrual-based financials, you are going to slow your process down. You are going to hurt your value. You may not even get an offer. Cash basis, doesn't work. It doesn't have to be audited financials, although having some external review of your financials is key. It does need to be real accrual financials.
Those are great points. I mean, my first thing is do not try to be a lawyer. I mean, Michael has been in school, whether it's an actual school or working in a law firm his entire life. Right. Why would I try to be a lawyer if he's on my team, right? I don't go over to second base and try to catch the ground ball if I'm playing third. That's just a far away, even though I might want to.
I don't know, these shifts these days in major leagues, man.
That is true. I'm not a fan of the shift.
Well, you don't try to play center field from third base.
Exactly. Don't try to be a lawyer. There were key points. I can tell you from personal experience, there were key points when we closed the transaction in January that I still don't understand. I still don't. And entrepreneurs hate not having full control. They want to have all the knowledge power. They want to have all the information because they want to make the decision. Just give it up, right? The law side is not for you. You should spend your time developing the relationship with the individual partner or lawyer that you're going to use. You should not spend your time understanding the law. I'm a junkie for learning new things, so I like to go through the contract basis and learn new stuff with it. I found that to be extremely interesting, but I still had points where I was like, Michael, you've explained it to me 67 different ways. I still just don't get it. It's okay. If you feel strongly about it, then I feel strongly about it. And if you don't, then I don't. And where are we stand with this, with these key points in transaction?
I don't understand the infield fly rule either.
Nobody does, or the designated hitter.
Oh boy, we could talk about some playoff games.
Hey, I want to go back to something that Michael said that is so important, and you and I have experienced personally, and that is when you're selecting your advisors, be they lawyers or accountants or whomever, select them knowing what your plans are, because that relationship that you two have and that I had with Larry Street and Carl Earhart at Morris Manning, that was so important going through that transaction. I knew we were reading each other's thoughts, right? And you guys clearly do the same thing. So to the point you were making, I think it's important for entrepreneurs to know to make that decision early. If you have a plan for an exit for your company.
Right.
And whether you do or not,
actually,
right? Yeah. I mean, find that person that you connect with, and make them part of your business early on, because that level of comfort, right? Yep. That ability to say, if you feel strongly about it, I feel strongly about it. Right. That is so important.
Yep, I agree. And the last thing I was going to say on the do side, right? You don't want to be a lawyer. On the do side is do all the things that you know that you need to do anyways, right? And that's a broad term. To piggyback off of Michael's comments and sentiments, do get your financials audited. It is a minimal investment to make yourself a professional business.
Yeah.
Do get a real accounting platform, right? Real is subjective to whatever industry you're in. Do get an outside audit team to help not only review the financials, but give you pointers on how you could advance your accounting program. Because accounting is the only thing across all businesses that stays the same.
Yep.
That's why all the private equities want to ask about accounting and financials, because it's the one thing that they can truly understand with anybody's business.
Yep.
Right? There's different ways to report and things like that, but those are all nuance, right? The law is much greater. And then the individual industries are much more, niche when you really get down into the. So great. You've got a cloud-based platform in industry X. How is your accounting set up is going to make or break a second even interview from a private. If you don't have your accounting set up, they're not going to call you back, and that's one less buyer. And so always what I'm trying to do is create leverage, right? More buyers, more leverage, more opportunities. Last thing I'll say about Michael in all his glory, the best quote he ever gave me was that price is only one factor of value. And I use that with clients all the time. I use that when we sell businesses all the time. If you're going to go with the highest price, you're going to give on so much more than you really want to at the end of the day. You've got to find that happy medium, and you've got to define value for yourself, right? For me, moving to the Redwood platform has allowed me to spend an infinite amount of time with my son, right? I wasn't present at home as an entrepreneur. Let's be honest. You're always thinking of something. My notes on my iPhone is ridiculous. Like hundreds of notes, right? You're always thinking, hey, let's try this, let's do this. This has allowed me to step back from that and do two things that I feel like are huge, opportunities for me, and that's be a great father and be a great husband. And I don't have to do a lot of the things that I used to have to do, and I'm trying to take advantage of that time, here, while also trying to add value to the organization.
Outstanding.
Yeah. That's great.
We could easily go into a second hour here, but let's make sure our listeners, as we wrap up here, can reach out and learn more about both Redwood and AGG. So let's start with you, Adam.
Sure. RedwoodLogistics.com. It's a newly redesigned website. Looks great.
Cool logo.
There's so many strides being made at this place. Like I said, just feeling really blessed about being a part of it. So come see us. Come check us out anytime.
Outstanding.
How about reaching you?
Yeah, personal. I think it's A McDaniel at RedwoodLogistics.com. The reason I'm thinking is because we just did the transition with the emails and some of that kind of stuff. So,
folks can shoot us a note
anytime.
Amanda at supplychainradio.com. We'll make sure it reaches Adam. So, Adam McDaniel, outstanding. Really appreciate your time today. You bet.
Yeah.
Yep. And Michael, what about you and AGG?
Same. Our website would be the best. Entry point, agg.com. My contact information is on the web.
Great. Outstanding. Or you can find them on the show on a seemingly regular basis.
Yeah.
We love having you back on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. It's a different, I think we, whether you're entrepreneurs, which we can speak from that point of view, or supply chain practitioners, we get so wrapped up in the solutions and meeting the problems of the customer. I think a lot of times the business side, especially when you think about risk mitigation and just the structuring and bigger picture opportunities, that can oftentimes be not just second seat, but way back seat, the old station wagon from the 80s, right, where you're looking out the back window. And I think having folks like Michael on helps bring that back front and center, I think.
For sure.
Right?
You've got to find time to work on the business, right? Yeah. Can't always be working in it.
Yeah. Okay, Adam McDaniel with Redwood Logistics, Michael Golden with Arnold Golden Gregory. Outstanding show here today on a subject matter on topics that we don't cover enough. So we look forward to having y'all back on, and wish you both continued success and growth. All right, so before we wrap up today, for starters, if there's anything that we talked about here today that you want to learn more information about, or you can't find it on Google, which you can find just about everything and then some these days, reach out to our CMO at Amanda@supplychainnowradio.com, and we'll try to track down the information you're looking for. But also, we want to invite our listeners to come check us out in person, right, Greg?
Turns out we're going to be going some places.
We are going. Oh, the places you'll go.
That's right.
So we've got 4 items on the calendar we're going to shoot through real quick. In fact, we might see Adam and Michael at some of these places together. Our next stop, we're here. We just got back from Austin, Texas, and the Logistics CIO Forum, part of the EFT, which is now a Reuters event. Kudos to them. We're going to be here at a home studio throughout the end of the year, but then in January, we're going to be at the CSCMP Atlanta Roundtable event, January 15th, where they're featuring someone from NASTRAC coming out to talk about some of the regulation changes and how it will impact transportation companies. That's open to the public. And do you have any idea where folks can go to learn more, Greg?
Probably CSCMP.org.
That is right. That's the national or the international site, the parent organization. And you can also go to AtlantaCSCMP.org. Looking forward to that. And then February and Vegas. Why are we heading back out to Vegas?
Reverse Logistics Association. So we're going to be talking about circular economy and returns and reverse logistics, a huge topic, particularly in retail and e-commerce, right?
And as we talked about it a couple times, Tony Schroeder and Jack Allen, who's one of the board members, Jack's with Cisco, they're both in the studio last week. And, it's so interesting. Very few companies like Cisco have returns and reverse logistics down. So many outstanding organizations are still trying to feel their way through this. If you're going to do e-commerce, you got to figure out that side of the business, right? Mm-hmm. That's where organizations like RLA come in. The conference and Expo, which is our biggest annual event. They're an international group, happen to be based here in Atlanta. You can join us in Vegas for that February 4th through the 6th conference and Expo, rla.org.
At the Mirage.
At the Mirage.
But a goodie.
That's right.
Right. Steve Wynn's first foray into Vegas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Great.
Vegas history.
One of my faves.
Next podcast series.
There you go.
All right. And then Modex coming back to Atlanta.
Just a few folks going to that.
35,000 of your best supply chain friends and neighbors, March 9th through the 12th. And on the 10th, during that week, we're very proud that Modex is hosting our 2020 Atlanta Supply Chain Awards. In fact, last year, March 2019, was our first year program.
Right.
We couldn't have done it without the support from the AGG team, so thank you, Michael, once again. I think that's the 17th time. But we got to have good partners that get that off the ground. And boy, did we. Sold out. We had over 50 nominations in 12 or so different categories. Had a great keynote last year. We're trying to go not too much bigger, as we've talked about, Michael, but a little bigger and a lot better. And you can't partner with too much of a bigger organization than Modex 2020, especially that time of year. Who's our keynote, Greg?
Christian Fisher, President and CEO at Georgia Pacific.
And our MC?
Shan Cooper.
And in case you don't know, incredible 1-2 punch. Shan Cooper now is the Executive Director of the Atlanta Committee for Progress. But prior to that role, she was a senior leader, executive leader of the Lockheed plant.
Yeah.
And then also Chief Transformation Officer at West Rock. So
if you like reading books, read her bio.
Absolutely. Man.
What she has done is impressive.
So 1-2 punch. Couldn't think of a better combination for the 2020 Atlanta Supply Chain Awards, March 10th. Nominations are open. I saw the latest one come through this week with Stored, which is an outstanding organization. Y'all might be familiar with Stored. They've gone through a couple of successful raises as they continue to grow. from 17 team members to over 50. I think they're going to be at 60 before year end. And I'm sure 2020 is going to be another big year of growth for that team. So congrats to Stored for being nominated. We've added categories: Startup Innovation, or Startup of the Year, Innovation Award, Manufacturing, Procurement, you name it. There's something for you.
Bright Future Award, that's my favorite.
I want
to hear about the young people getting into supply chain.
Yes.
I want to see
Karn.
Yeah, Karn Agarwal was such a great example. We just interviewed him a couple weeks back, working for Dell in Austin.
Yes, he graduates from Georgia Tech, I'm sure near top of his class, and then goes into a strategy role with one of the iconic American technology firms, Dell in Texas.
Supply chain disruptor themselves,
yes,
right?
That's right. Atlanta, supplychainawards.com. Nominations, sponsorships, registrations are all open. And Modex, by the way, is free to attend. So modexshow.com, MODEX show.com, to come out and network with some of the movers and shakers across the supply chain world. And one final note, we're going to be broadcasting live from the AME Atlanta 2020 Lean Summit. Y'all might be familiar with AME, the Association for Manufacturing Excellence. They've got a big regional event coming up in Atlanta May 4th through the 7th, so we look forward to that. Man, what do we not tackle today?
Nothing. We didn't not tackle nothing.
I go double negative on you. Well, big thanks to our guests here, Adam McDaniel, Redwood Logistics, Michael Golden with AGG. Pleasure to knock out another show with my co-host here, Greg White. And to our listeners, be sure to check out other upcoming events, replays of our interviews, other resources at supplychainnowradio.com. Where can they find us, Greg?
They can find us anywhere they find their podcasts or on YouTube. Sorry.
That's right. Including the world's...
Train distracted me.
Well, we got logistics out here with the trucks. We got the train.
We're surrounded by logistics.
World's busiest airport, which is coming on the show in next month. But check us out wherever you get your podcast from. On behalf of the entire team, this is Scott Luton here wishing you a wonderful week ahead, and we will see you next time on Supply Chain Now Radio. Thanks, everybody.